Welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is our Glasgow Rangers preview, obviously looking ahead to Thursday's Europa League game at Ibrox, which no doubt will be an interesting clash, to say the least. You know, the Battle of Britain, who will come out on top. You know, I'm sure the underdogs in Rangers would love to get one over one of their so-called English big counterparts from the Premier League, one of the so-called Big Six clubs coming to their ground. And also the extra interesting fact here is obviously I'm sure they would look to put another nail in Big Ange's coffin, given his past Celtic connections. So obviously we go into this game and let's have a little look at the Europa League table at the moment, because I was asked a little while ago what I thought of this new format in the Europa League and whether I was a fan of it or not. And obviously being one of these sort of old school, remembering just straight knockouts, you know, two-leg knockout um, games between teams. And then obviously we went to the group stage where we seemed to, you know, two teams got put in a group with two real sort of like what seemed dross teams. And then it was pretty simple, straightforward to qualify, where you only probably needed to get two wins and you was in. So when I was asked, was I a fan of this new format? I wasn't too sure, being old school. But actually, when we look at this league table, the one thing I do think it's done is it has created some interest, because looking at the table now, I think you could say that the first four teams, you know, from Lazio to Galatasaray, I think given what they've done and the fact that they're unbeaten and the points they've already got on the board, I think it's probably safe to say, and I suppose we have to include Anderlecht if I'm talking about Galatasaray as well. I think those five teams have probably done enough and will have enough about them to make sure they qualify within that top eight. Because as we know, the top eight go straight through to the next round, and those below them have to go into a qualifying game, you know, a knockout game, which you don't want to be in just to add those extra couple of games and those extra couple of fixtures in. Excuse me. And obviously, at the moment, our opponents sit one place above us in that eighth position while we're sitting in ninth, but both on 10 points. But if you have a look at that table, look at the teams that are there and the points. It's just 1 or 2 points that are separating a lot of sides. And with 3 games to go, there is still a lot of sort of excitement, I guess, as to who is going to qualify in that top eight, because it only takes 1 or 2 wins to put yourself right up there, and 1 or 2 defeats to suddenly send you plummeting down the table. So it has put a lot of interest in this competition, and there will now not be a situation where you're sitting there thinking there's dead rubbers at all. And if we look at Spurs' position sitting in 10th, then, or sitting in ninth rather, sorry, we can't really afford too many slip ups now, to be honest, if we want to be within that top eight. You know, with Rangers, we have another away game and then the final game that will be at home. But with Spurs' form this year, you couldn't sit there right now and easily say, no, we'll have enough to make sure we're in that top eight. So we can't afford too many slip ups. And I don't think we can actually afford a defeat in this away game to Rangers. I think we need to try and at least get a point out of there to make sure we still have a really good opportunity to get inside that top eight and avoid those extra fixtures. So there's going to be a lot riding on this game. And it is interesting. And I do actually think now I would change my opinion and say this new format actually has made the competition slightly more interesting than it was when it was just straight knockout phases. So actually, I've changed my mind on that. I quite like it. So let's have a little look at Rangers first of all. Now, obviously, they haven't had the greatest start to the league season. And I've been speaking to some Rangers fans and know a couple of, you know, people who are really into Rangers. And they feel Spurs are going to walk this game. They think Rangers are really poor. They've got no chance. We will go there, be far too strong for them, brush them aside. And they're giving Rangers not a hope. They're also sitting there saying Rangers have got Celtic in their cup final on Sunday, so they won't be looking to bust the gut on Thursday and risk any injuries or that with that big game against Celtic coming up. But I just keep saying to them, I think you're missing the point, and that is the fact that this is Spurs. And whether or not we're the better side or Rangers have had a poor start to the season in the league, etc., and they've not been doing well, and defensively they're a mess, I still say, but this is Spurs, and we don't know what Spurs will turn up. And as we've seen already this season, when Spurs are expected to be favourites, they don't often perform. So I don't think this game is a foregone conclusion as they think it is. So at the moment, their manager is Philippe Clement. Now, their Europa League form hasn't been too bad, considering the league form hasn't been great. But in the Europa League, it's 3 wins, 1 loss, and a draw. As I say, they sit 8th, we sit ninth, both on 10 points at the moment. Rangers have scored 12 to our 10, so they've scored a couple more than us, but each team have conceded 6 in their 5 games so far. So, not really much between the teams in terms of how they've been doing in the Europa League. And ultimately, like I say, I still think it's going to be that Spurs ability to turn up and kind of be as bad as we can be when we can, and when we're expected to be favourites, and there's that pressure on us and that mentality that players have to go into a certain game. I think that's going to be the big difference. I think Rangers will also be looking to make sure they can get one over Ange, given his past Celtic connections. So I don't see this as a foregone conclusion. And again, when you look at the Tottenham team news that we've got going into the game, we know Romero's now out for 6 weeks. And again, I think we have to blame Ange for that. You know, the desperation in playing Romero and Van der Ven in the game at Chelsea this weekend, where I think he was desperately worried about his job and thinking that he needed a result to kind of take that pressure off him. And it backfired. And now Romero will be missing from the Man United League Cup game, the Liverpool game in the league at home, and vital fixtures over Christmas and probably January, if we're being honest. From what we hear about Van der Ven, it was just tightness in his hamstring, but he won't be playing in this game. Andrew's kind of already hinted that this game might be too soon for him and that it's more likely he'll feature against Southampton at the weekend. So at the moment, we've got one fit centre half, and that's Dragusin. And let's face it, although he's done well over these last couple of games, he hasn't set his season alight so far before that. And he's going to have to kind of mentor Archie Gray, because we're pretty sure it's going to be Archie Gray that moves into that centre back position. So he's going to have to mentor him through this game. And if you're Rangers, you'll be sitting there saying, well, that's our target. That's the weakness. That's the weak area we need to hit. Get on Archie Gray and make sure you make life difficult for him in a position that he's really unfamiliar with and might not actually be that comfortable playing at. So that's going to be a problem. Foster will be in goal, no doubt about it. I don't think, given the situation and the fact that we probably still need to get something from this game, I think Porro and Ndoggy will have to play. And again, when you consider the minutes they've had and the fact that you would be ideally liking to rest them, you would like to think this would be a great opportunity. But again, as I say, I think we've got to try and get something from this game. So Ange has to go pretty strong. So I think that'll be the back four, Porro, Dragusin, Gray, and Ndoggy. Bentancur is available, even though he's suspended in the league. He's available for this game. So I'd see him going straight in, probably replacing Basuma, who, not a bad thing after that tackle in that Chelsea game and his performance. I think Maddison comes back in, having, not started the Chelsea game. So I think it'll be Maddison, Bentancur, and I think Sarr keeps his place. I think Ange likes his energy and getting in and around the pitch. But again, he had a head loss moment and a brain dead moment in that Chelsea game. So we have to hope he's learned from that and doesn't do that again. And then the front three's an interesting one. Will Lancashire is back, available from his suspension for his red card in the Galatasaray game. And then it's a question of whether Ange feels that Solanke probably needs a rest and needs some recovery time, given all the work he's done in the last few games. Johnson went off through illness apparently in the Chelsea game, but he looks like he'll be back. I think Son obviously will play. I think the front three will be Johnson, Solanke, and Son. But obviously Ange could throw Lancashire in. He did trust him in Turkey, and if you trust him in that sort of atmosphere, then again, Ibrox will be a similar kind of atmosphere to the Galatasaray game. So he might throw him in. Obviously, Werner's available as well, so whether he'll get minutes. And ultimately, I guess with that front three, we just don't know what Ange will do. He's changed it up for most of these Europa League games. So let's see. But I think we need to go strong to kind of get something out of the game. How do I see the game going? My biggest question mark is always over this Spurs side is the mentality to be able to go away from home in a tough atmosphere, a tough environment, and a game where we'd probably be expected to go and win comfortably. And I'm afraid for me, my years have shown me that Spurs, unfortunately, don't often cope with that sort of pressure, and the players, mentality wise, can't perform under those sort of circumstances. And like I say, although the people I've got who are Rangers fans telling me you'll walk this, it's no problem, it's Spurs. Yeah, it's Spurs. We've done it so often before. I've seen it so often before. I'm worried. And I've made it clear I don't think Ange is the right man for the job. I think he's out of his depth. I think tactically he's inept and people find him out easy. And I think the mainstream media are now starting to kind of clock onto it a bit. And there is a lot more talk about whether this guy has actually got what it takes to manage a side at the elite level, and I don't think he has. And I think this will just be another game that kind of proves it. I'm going for a 2-1 Rangers win and a result that kind of puts that top 8 position in some jeopardy, even though we've got a couple of games left after that. I think with teams possibly winning below us, Man United are catching us up. And like I say, that league is so tight. But another slip up, I think, puts us in a slightly dangerous position in this competition to qualify straight away. 2-1 for me, Rangers, I'm going for. I think Spurs will just let us down again. Let us know what you think. What do you think? What side do you think Andy's going to go for? What's your score prediction for this game? Like and subscribe, and see you on the next one. Come on, you Spurs.